While making one of these videos, I recently thought about and remembered the first time I went to a GP, the first time I went to anybody to talk about the fact that I was depressed. And it was a pretty horrific experience. Now, this took me months and probably maybe years to pluck up the courage. I mean, I was only a teenager at the time, and to pluck up the courage to go to somebody, to anybody. I had no support whatsoever, and I thought, okay, I'll go to a professional. I need to go to a doctor for help about this. And I'm not sure what help I wanted. I suppose in the back of my head I thought maybe there's medication out there for me. But I decided to go to a doctor, and it took me a very long time to pluck up the courage to go and see this doctor about it. Now, I went into that GP. So in the last 10 years, there's been a huge amount of, there's been a transformation really in our approach to mental health. And now people are discussing it all the time, very openly on social media, on the internet and things. But before 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. It was the opposite. Nobody talked about it. And it was a really stigmatized subject. And it certainly was for me. And nobody around me was talking about it. And I didn't feel free to talk about it. So this was a massive step for me to go to the GP to talk about it. And when I went to the GP and made the appointment, I was terrified. I went in, I sat down in front of him, and he says, what are you here for today? And I said, I think I'm depressed. And I remember at the time he whipped out a notebook, and he it was very physically intimidating. He leaned forward on the desk and he said, "Are you suicidal?" That was the first question he said to me. So it was very much, he was pushing back at me. It was a very physical reaction, and it was an intimidating one. And that's not the only time that I've had that kind of aggressive approach by doctors, and a very arrogant and aggressive approach. And it felt to me at the time that after all of that struggle bringing that into the GP, that he was taking the attitude, you're bringing a problem in here now, and I'm going to push back at you and try and break that down and push back at you about the issue that you're bringing in here. And it seemed very deliberate that he was pushing that very extreme question. Now, I'm familiar with the fact that, and I've been asked lots of times since by professionals, are you suicidal? And it's done in context, and people have said, look, this is a necessary question that we have to ask because we're concerned and we want to make sure that you're okay. And that's fine. That's part, but there was definitely no context to this. It was just, his body language was certainly moving towards me in an aggressive way and pushing a very extreme question at me, and I said no. And then he kind of leaned back in the desk, and then it was clear the session might have lasted 5 minutes in total. I mean, that's all I got. I got 5 minutes after stewing on it for possibly a year, maybe 2 years at the time, and it was 5 minutes that I got. And people might say, oh, why didn't you demand more and all this kind of thing. You got to remember, I was vulnerable, depressed. I'm making excuses for myself, and I think you should take responsibility, and I do take responsibility. But looking back then, I was a very different person. I was as low as could be. I lacked a strength. I was in turmoil. And really, once I said no to that, it was as almost he felt, right, my responsibility, I'm Pontius Pilate and I'm washing my hands of this. I've managed to get him to say no to the suicide question, so I don't really care anymore. I mean, the other questions were, how was your sleep, how was this? And then at the end, he go, and after waffling on about the trifling questions, as he would kind of seem to think of it, he decided, he declared at the end, you're not depressed, good luck. And I went out the door, and I could not have felt more low, I would say, at that point. And in hindsight, it was an extremely risky strategy for any professional to take. And in hindsight, I'm glad I'm here still, because that was a particularly rough, dark time of my life, and I reached out and I needed somebody to be there, and he certainly wasn't. And sadly, he's not the only person in the medical profession that I've come across who's been completely and utterly uncaring and quite ruthless in their approach and aggressive. And with that, looking back at that boy now, that teenage boy who had to go in there, I feel sorry for the guy. But at the same time, I'm saying, well done that you did it. Let me know about your first experience in opening up to somebody, and hopefully it was better than mine. See you next time.